Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, welcome to Jeff's Unknown. You're with me, Jeff, and we are going to be talking about a good subject tonight. The subject is there a secret space program? Now, that is a really good question. And you know what? I am not going to present a huge thing about it. We're just going to discuss about it. And to make it fair for everyone, we're gonna discuss maybe is it has it will it has it been all these types of things. Was there a space program? Is there a space program, a secret one? How long has it been, and why haven't we heard about it? And those are the things that we always question. We always say, hey, listen, what's going on? Because I think we live in a sea, an ocean of conspiracy. But what is conspiracy, right? Because they're the old saying, in every truth there's a bit of lie, and in every lie there's a bit of truth. So in conspiracy, who knows, right? Because in 1969 we embarked on a beautiful journey towards the moon, and not just once but several times, right? Now maybe you have probably weren't born then. I wasn't. But I know, as for a generation who looked at the stars and said, holy crap, we're going to the moon. And like recently, Artemis 2, we're going to go back to the moon after so long. But the thing is that we noticed that humanity, all of a sudden, after a few times, we didn't go back to the moon. And I think, was it after 3 Apollo missions, they stopped it completely, televising it. And it seemed like somewhere, people kind of lost interest in the moon. And I kind of noticed that that's the problem with humanity. Once it's new, and all of a sudden, we've been there, done that, it's boring, right? Or did they do that intentionally to make it boring, to make it not as really appealing or a big thing? Because I mean, if you're going to talk to an astronaut to been on the moon, so how's the moon? There's not much to see, apparently, right? So, and it's also on your views too on Apollo 11. Did we really go to the moon? See, that's another live that I'm going to do. We're going to talk about that, because the astronauts, after coming back, looked extremely miserable. And there are theories that when they went to the moon, they noticed that they weren't alone. And there's two schools of thought on that. If we go into that conspiracy aspect, there's two schools of thought. There's the one where they went there and they noticed that they weren't alone. They were being observed, because they did notice that in some certain pictures, there were spacecraft or some type of anomaly in the picture that looked like a typical UFO. And they were probably maybe warned off and say, hey, listen, don't come back here. Because of another speculation of helium-3. Now, if you look at helium-3, I mean, if you look at the properties and all that, it's a very good element that we can use for fusion and maybe future space travel or whatever. And if there's an abundance on the moon, well, then maybe someone else is mining it or harvesting or whatever you call it. I don't know what the hell you do with helium-3. Harvest it? I don't know. Pump it? I don't know. But then there's the other school of thought that we look at and we say, maybe they did find it. Maybe they found more than what they thought they were going to see. All they wanted to see was some sand and some rocks and earth from a distance and a selfie and then go home. Maybe they found something or knew of something that was extremely amazing and that they could not tell the world. And they had to hide it. Because remember, that was the time there was the Cold War, right? Russia was just building spaceships like crazy. Thank God they changed their mind and went towards Venus, because there were a lot of spacecraft sent out there to Venus to see how, what the planet was all about. So, but the fact is that it was during the Cold War. It was a time where, kids were being taught, duck and cover. If you see a big mushroom cloud, duck and cover. Like that's going to happen. It's going to melt your face off, but it's okay. Duck and cover. It was a very scary time. And it was a time where people, I think, could not understand the implications that if you did find yourself, let's say on the moon, and you did come across alien technology, to a superior element that could be used for whatever, or three, knowing that whatever, okay? Whatever. Like the whatever is like all the above, because just think of that. The Americans are on the moon for the first time. And let's say they do find some type of alien technology or whatever. That could have caused a war on Earth. Because now the Russians think that the Americans have an advantage. Because for sure, if you come in contact with superior technology, damn, you got the upper hand. It's like, let's say for an example, you time travel back into 14 something, and you find yourself in North America, and you go into that time travel journey with let's say an M16, a machine gun, and you forget it there and you come back. Or let's say you go somewhere else and an Indian, a native, finds that machine gun right there. He has the ultimate power, even though he may not know what it is. But once he starts playing with it, probing it, and finding out that, hey man, I can knock out a whole tribe with just this one thing. Obviously, you have a superior advantage. So it's the same thing too. If the astronauts went onto the moon and declared that there was something there. Now, obviously, that's a whole different ball game. But the fact is, the question is there a space program? Well, a secret one. Because let's say an example, we have the ability and the know-how, and we found out that, on the moon, there is helium-3. There are other things that we can do in space. And for self-defense or national defense, obviously, we have to keep it quiet. All astronauts, they're bound to secrecy too. Like not all satellites that go into the atmosphere. Well, no, excuse me, I'll into space around the Earth. Okay, not the atmosphere, but above the atmosphere, beyond the atmosphere, where there's that nice, beautiful place where all the satellites go. Well, a lot of them are spy ones. They're military. They're intelligence and stuff like that. So when astronauts, they go up there, there's, that's totally top secret. So when they're up there and you don't know what they're putting up there. So in a way, we do have a secret space program. We do, if you really think about it. If you really put your finger on it, you're gonna say, okay, yeah, you're right. But there was this famous, wonderful picture. Not picture, video. I'm sorry about that. That NASA had, and NASA, ever since then, were censorizing a lot of the video coming from the International Space Station or missions and stuff like that, because a lot of things were captured, and people were saying, look, what's that? And there was one video. It's an old video. I don't know if it's in the late 90s, I think. And all of a sudden, you see the Earth, and then you see this object coming to the atmosphere, and then you see a flash, whoosh, and all of a sudden, the thing from underneath, and the object just happened to move, and then this thing comes right out after it. And they're like, well, is that a laser? Is that some type of space weapon do we have? And right there, I think that came a little bit in the same narrative that that maybe there is, and there are developing weapons and stuff like that. The question is why is there a secret space program? Well, I think it has to do a lot with during the Cold War, but it's also the fact is that maybe there are two types of space programs. There's the one that we have in NASA and stuff like that, and the other one is more in development. And if we have found helium 3, well, then I think maybe there was a kind of, I don't know, understanding that you could not tell that to the world because then bang. Because if you had something that could take away petroleum and stuff like that, then maybe that would be a very bad thing for the economy, right? You wouldn't be able to monopolize, or maybe you can't monopolize. So the fact is that if we look at a secret space program, I mean, I think for sure there's definitely is. I mean, listen, I mean, don't you find it all of a sudden find it weird that billions of dollars go missing, and NASA, for an example, is always broke? What do they do with their money, right? Or is it really NASA? Is NASA the only civilian organization that is in that first tier of you know like the most exposed? Like, okay, but then there's that other one. And why are they doing that? Why are they're hiding that from us? And there's a lot of theories that come behind it. There's a lot of theories that look at it and say, maybe it's because we've made a pact with these with other space extraterrestrials. Maybe they were the ones who were saying, okay, come and we'll teach you, but you can't mingle that with your civilization. Because there's a lot of technology that we have the capability. We have it. We have the technology. Listen, this is why, when you look back in the 80s, when I was a kid, a teacher would turn around and say, what do you think the future would be like? And everybody's like, oh my God, flying cars. And oh my God, we'd be on Mars. I seriously thought at my age, there would have been a chance that I'd probably be visiting Mars or being on the moon as like a weekend excursion or whatever. That it would be a possibility, but it did not. And it's like somewhere where I don't understand how in 1969 we had the technology to put ourselves into space and on the moon, but yet all of a sudden we don't go to space anymore, and all of a sudden the International Space Station is like too expensive now and stuff like that, and there's so many challenges and stuff like that, but yet we had so many years from the first time we set our foot on the moon to today. There's so much time that passed, and you're telling me that we could not find a different way of travel and stuff like that when they have found or have developed? Because I knew engineers. Okay, listen to this. This is funny. Okay, well, it's not funny, but it's like it's ironic because I used to be a security guard for like I said, I have to be very careful because I did sign some papers, so I can't really say much, but I was a security guard. I worked for a tech company. I was just a security guard, just at the front door, sign in here, got your card, beep, that's it. Okay, whatever. It wasn't a big deal. It was not like I worked for NASA. No, it was like I worked there for like a year and got bored, and then I went somewhere else. But it's like one of those places where there's all the people on computers, and you would walk around just inspecting, the fire extinguisher, okay, door locked, perfect, light works. It's the regular security guard. And there's all these guys and all that on the computers tapping away, and then there was one guy I befriended. He was really cool. And it's like a real typical nerd, You ever saw watching Revenge of the Nerds, right? Thick glasses, same thing, Very nice guy. We talked about everything. But then he told me, and we were talking about space travel, because at that time I was like, I was just curious on everything, And we're talking about space travel, and he's like, yeah, it's possible. Yeah. Well, he says, the ion engine. I'm like, what? What ion? What? He says, yeah, the ion engine. He says, well, listen, he says, there's some things I can tell you that I know from somebody very credible. and there's some things that we worked on, but he can't tell me. I was obviously that he worked for the Canadian Space Agency and stuff like that. So he says the technology of the capability of moving into space quicker than combustion, right? Because all these with the engines, how they are, they it's how can I say this? It's like combustion pushing you, but this is ionization. So he says, yeah, we have an ionized cannon, not cannon, but engine that can go from one place to another very quickly, from one point to another. He goes off, and these are the type of that type of technology where we have little small craft, and go from one, I don't know, asteroid, whatever. He says it's a lot of capabilities of doing that. He says that is coming. He says that is the future and stuff like that. So I looked at him. I said, "Is there an ionized engine?" He says, "Yes, but in theory, it's still it's still." Oh, sorry, it cut there for a second. The internet cut. So he says, it's almost, it's there, And I knew he couldn't really speak about it because he probably knew people. When you're in that field, right? You know things. So obviously I tried to, respect it. A few years later, holy shit. There's this asteroid. All of a sudden NASA builds this thing and it goes and visits the asteroid, and it has an ion engine. I said, holy crap. So it is true that the technology we have, it's been a long time. So you're telling me that we could not have the capability of going to Mars or the moon 50 years ago. Yeah, I'm telling you, there's so much that they don't tell us about. And that's why I think strongly that there is a secret space program. There is, and maybe it's not as big as we think it is. It's not like these movies where, we have like, like the Imperial fleet of humans, into space. No, I don't think it's that. But I think that the implications of having a secret space program is kind of dangerous. It's very dangerous because if the United States or Canada, or let's say combined together, have things that that are hidden from the public, that are military based, it's very concerning, because if we can do it, the Chinese are doing it, the Indians are doing it. Then what's going to happen after a while when space runs out of space, right? Because very limited around the Earth. I mean, right now, I don't know how many satellites do we have. So what happens next? Will there be a battle for space? Because they say the minute you do conquer space, well, you have the upper hand. So maybe that is why Trump at this moment is pushing so hard to going back to the moon. Maybe that's why China too is really working hard on sending a man to the moon. And this is why Artemis 2 is the beginning of, I believe, the unveiling of this secret space program. That eventually they're going to the moon. And maybe the reason why they're going back to the moon is to maybe verifying to see if there are not other people there. Because there are rumors saying that Chinese may be up there mining away this precious element called helium-3. And the thing is if the Chinese have it, and they do end up knowing how to use it properly and sustaining it, and combining it into an engine with that technology and whatever you call it, to create a vessel that is extremely performant in space, therefore the Chinese have an upper hand, and the Americans, damn well, won't want that to happen. Because right now, I think, even though if we look at, let's say, the 1980s, when you were a kid like myself, or let's say you're in my parents' generation, the baby boomers per se, when you look at the future, you're saying, well, we should have been there by now. We should have been in space, flying cars and stuff like that. Well, I think spiritually, I think human nature, we have arrived to that point. I don't know if you know what I mean. I think we've arrived to that point, but the problem is that the technology that we have isn't compatible with our mentality as we speak. But I think that's what they're pushing for, is eventually allowing humanity getting out there. Because I could talk to him green in the face. There are so many conspiracies talking about that maybe there is a space threat coming. Maybe there are, and another life forms out there that may be malevolent. We don't know. And maybe the fact is that humanity deserves it. Maybe I think it's about time that we force ourselves out there. But I'm telling you, having a secret space program going on while no one knows about it and not an accountability, what are they really doing? And are they really doing it on the behalf of humanity? Are they doing it for good, profit? Is it for dominance? Who's governing this thing? Who has control? Because remember, you're looking at something that's not three-dimensional. It's four-dimensional. Because when you got land, air, and sea, and now you got space, and you can control space, you can control anything on the planet. That means you can have the upper hand on satellites, information. You have maybe technology like some type of ion cannon, which a lot of people have talked about. There's a lot of conspiracy. A lot of people like to point fingers and say, "Oh, you're conspiracy theorists. You're conspiracy theorists. Where's your tinfoil hat?" Mm-hmm. But in a lot of the conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of fact and a lot of truth. And I'm not saying you got to believe on everything, right? There's a lot of stuff that even with a pound of pot and hash and any type of drug, you could be drugged up and really high. There's not enough that can actually make you convinced that some of this stuff that comes out, I don't know where people get it, that is convincing. It's not. Now, I know it's hard to believe. How in the fact can we be paying for this? Well, we have noticed that there has been a lot of money being laundered left, right, and center. Even the Pentagon lost $1 billion something right after or just before the September 11th, right? There's billions of dollars being sent out, but we don't know where it is, right? So that's the fact, is what is really going up in space? What's really going on in space? And maybe a lot of these things that we see, that we think are UFOs, are basically probably human terrestrial vehicles. And if they have that capability, it's kind of scary. Because if they have that technology and they are able to go through space and through time, not time, but through space and all types of maneuvering that we can't. Human nature is just, oh my God. Human nature is so terrible. It just takes one crazy fanatic and then it just, so what happens if they go rogue and they don't answer to nobody and they decide, no, now you're going to be my bitch. And you're going to look at that and say, what the hell is going on? And maybe that's why so many weird things are happening right now. Who the hell is in charge of this secret space program? Is it the president of the United States? Is it Elon Musk? Because SpaceX is a private owned company. You know that, right? You see, SpaceX is the beginning of the privatization of space. And this is what I see as a future. It's not one whole organization like NASA that's going to go out there and control everything. It's all independent companies. Like, for an example, the movie Alien, Ripley, the alien. Well, that spaceship belonged to a company, not a government, not a nation. It was actually a private company. And that's how they were able to go in space, by privatization of space travel. So, that said, who says that the secret space program that we're talking about is maybe the privatization of different companies out there trying their stuff, seeking a better advantage on the monopolization of space. Because, oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, what we see in front of us, what we read on the news, half of it is bullshit. So what's really going on? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the question I'm asking tonight. So I hope you can, you guys could see a little bit of that perspective. And like I said, I don't have the proof that the space, secret space program exists. But I'll tell you one thing, though. I could tell you that there is. But what is it? And why is it? Is it because of extraterrestrials don't want us to mingle with that technology with the masses? Or do we want to keep an advantage, like keeping it in our pocket, that we're out there because we also have the communists, right? The Chinese that are actually trying to get out there. So is it really a space race or a space monopoly to take, like the game Risk, to take the board, to win the opposition, to become bigger, stronger, and obviously taking advantage what space can offer? It's a scary thought, but it's really kind of not far from the reality. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.